All right, we're a little behind schedule, apologies, but let's get started with our closing. If you missed the last 3 days, this is actually gonna be the perfect track for you because we're gonna do quick recaps from all of our track leads. So track leads, get loose, get limber, we're gonna get you up on stage and you're gonna get a couple of minutes to give a very, very short recap. When I say a couple of minutes, I literally mean 2 minutes. We are already behind schedule, you are not gonna get a lot of time, so keep it fast, show the slides, and let's move on. But anyways, this has been an absolutely fantastic last 3 days. Thank you all so much for participating and joining. This is the closing. It is our very last track, and after this we have happy hour, we have dinner with an awesome presentation, or surprise guest. And so let's get excited and move forward. This is our agenda. We are going to do recaps of the tracks, overall recap from the event. Then we're gonna have a very, very short, like 1 to 2 minute presentation on retro PGF. Then we're gonna do a retro, like an actual very quick retro as a group about what went well, what we can improve. Some final thanks to everyone who made this a fantastic event, and then send you off to happy hour next door to continue hanging out and chatting with each other. So I think first, just want to recap, like this was a fantastic week. We had beautiful setting, we had amazing conversations, we had lots of time to work with each other, we got some good costumes, like this was epic. Like we had amazing happy hours, we had great dinners. I don't even know what Scott's doing in that picture, but it looks charades maybe. Like we played some bingo. We've had a lot of fun, but we've also gotten a lot of things done, and thank you all for being here and participating and helping co-create this venue and this learning experience for all of us. And with that, we're gonna play you a little video of our time together. Into like just, three and a half, if we count all of us that went on epic hikes in the rain days. So thank you all so much for making this fantastic. We are going to now jump into a very quick set of track recaps. We know that everyone had extreme FOMO the last 3 days, trying to be everywhere at once, be in all of these different presentations. So this is a quick opportunity to recap what we learned, some of the takeaways, if we have next steps that people are going to follow up on, and if you didn't get to attend that track, what was covered there, so that you can go and watch all the recordings. Yes, we did record all of it. You can catch up with all of the places that you didn't get to be in person. This is our agenda. Can I have all the track leads stand up and come up on the stage? We're going to do the same thing we did at the beginning, but even faster, because again, we're tight timing. Thank you. Yes, applaud to our amazing track leads.
We need the Benny Hill music.
Okay. And I believe this is roughly the order, so look up at the screen, and that's roughly the order that you're going to come up to this handy-dandy microphones. And I'm going to click for you as fast as possible. Steven, you're starting, I believe. Woo!
Okay.
Go stand there.
Next slide. Okay, our first session was capabilities and direction. We talked a lot about how we needed access to, we wanted to give access to actors to native APIs and IPLD calling conventions and stuff like that. People want the ability to target native WASM, mostly because they want additional programming language, not necessarily performance. People want to be able to also want to be able to access sector storage from Filecoin. Another request that we got in this capabilities and direction section was fixing FVM versioning, because right now it's really painful. We now have 4 different versions, and you have to import all of them, or really 3 of them, if you want to be able to sync historical state. There were also a lot of requests to lower the complexity of addressing, where right now we have 5 different address classes plus 0x. And yeah, the AI here is going to write up some feedback. Path to WASM was sort of the next section. This is enabling WASM in the built-in actors, or sorry, allowing users to deploy WASM actors to the FVM. The path we landed on was basically starting with WASM interpreter inside WASM, and then a WASM interpreter outside of WASM and actually running natively in the FVM for better performance. And then finally a single pass compiler. We also made a decision where we would like to make interpreted actors appear to be appear the same as non-interpreted actors and not have 2 different ways of representing them. And again, the AI here isn't going to write up that feedback. Actor addressing, we talked about the biggest pain points with actor addressing that we have on chain. This is what I talked about before. We have like 5 different address classes plus 0x. The biggest one was actually just exchanges, where exchanges don't support F4 or 0x. And the solution here is to provide nicer APIs, so it's easier for them to integrate with Lotus. Back up. Sorry. Yeah. And yeah, we have a bunch of AIs. Okay. Then we had 2 more sessions. One was interfaces and data. We didn't really make too much progress here. We talked about, we didn't make too much progress here. Unfortunately, this turns out it's really not the highest priority right now. But we're going to record some learnings there, and Maciej is going to refresh where we left off with assembly script and Rust SDKs and stuff like that. And finally, we talked about account abstraction. Account abstraction is really hard, and that's what we concluded. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
In the protocol track here, we have a lighter track compared to like what in Singapore. However, we did go dig deeper into some of the open challenges and potential solutions that come out of like from Singapore. So the first one we sparked like more understanding of like why POREP, the security of the POREP. We talk about delegating data preparations, enable different pipelines for putting data onto the Filecoin network and different trade-offs for the network participants. We also discussed some potential network onboarding constraints. Fast like finality is urgently needed for multiple reasons. FVM use cases, IPC use cases also mean that Filecoin. So Granite is something that we really want to see to happen sometime in 2024, hopefully. Filecoin economics, we want the Filecoin network to be here forever, ever. So have a sound economics is very important, but it's also very complicated thing to analyze and like deploy. We also discussed further about timestamping chains. I have some takeaway to share in the next slide. And also direct data onboarding, more flexible onboarding pipelines, while being enabling new capabilities are the things that we want to focus working on next. We also further understanding the relationship between the PTP and Filecoin. Yeah, so some like key, there's a lot of learnings. We need more time to synthesize and like summarize, but like the high level ones is like first scaling Filecoin, we need IPC with like proofs for storage operations so that we can actually have Filecoin mean that storage things capabilities actually spread it into the tree of the network, subnets. And we also need to better understanding the censorship resistance of the expected consensus and how Granite, which is a new BFT consensus applied on top of the EC, how it will influence it. We also I will be fast. We also need like more demand drivers for Filecoin, but also like to maintain a stable supply. And timestamping is like needed for enable faster block time so that we can have faster retrieval and so on, like fast unsealing, faster retrieval, so on and so forth. However, it doesn't need consensus, but it has to be very fast. It has to be very fast, but also have like local consensus can fulfill its like user requirements. A lot of the things we're looking for from a storage perspective, like proof access, data deletion, updating the sector context, like resnap, replace the data in the storage, are all depend on the same missing capabilities, which takes on to the next steps. So first, across like multiple implementation teams and others, we will be set up like weekly syncing meetings to better to be on top of the GrandNet project, just to make sure we keep the momentum on introducing faster finality for the Filecoin network. Kuba is going to do more write-up on delegated data preparations, and I believe there's a group of people, maybe leading by Alex North, will be following up on timestamping for POREP and how we can achieve that, some of the design-based like challenges and the next steps over there, along with like CNL, I would say Lotus Manor team, like a lot of different teams. We will be investigating how different POREP can and different sealing pipelines can be good for different use cases and different like storage providers, sitting as a service providers, their business like models. So we will be exploring that even more, and hopefully we can actually enable ResNet sector context update sooner rather than later. Kuba is going to be writing up all things about new proofs, which including some of the NI POREP and faster POREP and all those things, to have a bigger overview on the challenges we have. And we do want to stay on top of the potential network onboarding constraints that discovered by Kuba. So the first action item will be set better monitoring for understanding historical and future trends of chain utilizations, just to make sure when there's an action to take, we are on top of it.
Awesome. They were 3 days, so a little bit extra time.
So we had a great kickoff from Juan talking about what needs to be retrievable. One of the nice memes that I think the retrieval track is starting to use to make retrieval less only our problem is that when you look at this, the baseline blue and red things here, which sort of look like archival or just like, can you get this data out once, start to require having pretty reasonable bandwidth for SPs of the sizes we have. And so we can turn this into a problem for data onboarding and stuff and start to say things like, it may be irresponsible to store so much data that you can't even get it out once before it expires. And that starts to even get our current measurement pieces to move into a place where they start to have ramifications and cause people to start upgrading capacity. The nice thing here is that the cost to go from archival level, getting stuff out once before it expires, to serving retrievals at the levels that we need for many of the applications is really a relatively small delta. Most of the cost comes from the having enough capacity to get stuff out once. So that makes our lives in retrieval incentives somewhat easier. Next slide. Here's a picture of some of the ecosystem which Patrick presented and helped put together. There's a lot of moving parts already. A lot of this is the actual getting data out. There's also a measurement and incentivization loop that's getting worked on to further reinforce this. It's already starting to work, I think is probably one of the takeaways that we got from Caro's presentation and Deep's. This is how well HTTP retrieval is working. The interesting thing that you can see is that red line dropping, and that's when it started getting sort of like there's an intervention there that was effective. And it's not a monetized intervention. It's purely sort of community pressure. And so with very minimal things, we can see that we can start to have pretty meaningful effects. And these things are starting to mature. Measurement is sort of the largest remaining gap. Next steps. We're working on finalizing sort of concretely what we mean by various levels of retrievability. We're doing better on retrieval measurements. And there's a bunch of work on a retrieval bot v2 from data programs to help with this. Spark is coming on with the next iteration after that of a fully decentralized measurement thing. We've got projects like the dstore REST API that are providing better experiences that include retrieval. So we're getting more users that are expecting retrievability of their data. Saturn is working on clearly defining what it needs from SP origin fetches and thinking about, is this, how much of the thundering herd and caching should live in SPs versus is something that the clients above it would make use of and protect themselves. And we're continuing to increase our market implementations and defining what they need to do to provide good retrievals. I heard a ding, so I think I did that in time.
Just one other thing to consider, I think it's interesting, is we've talked about these levels of retrievals, archival, pseudo hot warm storage, S3 storage, and then CDN. And the S3 storage is an interesting one because, and like thinking about everything that needs to change about Filecoin to make that work. I think a lot of the stuff that the protocol evolution folks were talking about just now is critical to making that actually work, because you need like short deals, fast unsealing, all that stuff. So yeah.
Hey everybody. We had an amazing time on Monday afternoon in the Click to Pib track. We heard from really a number of people who are out there driving enterprise adoption of Filecoin today and hearing about the solutions they've developed, which shone a light on some of the gaps they had to fill and some of the tooling and some of the services available today. You know, it was really interesting. We learned from Banyan about some SP side tooling they've installed to enable access control lists, for example, and to enable reliable hot retrievals. We heard from Seal Storage about the importance of durability and availability and what goes into their SP design, and challenges, frankly, in finding replication partners, SPs, that meet their durability and availability requirements. We heard from Internet Archive about really their journey through the ecosystem onboarding over time, the tools that have enabled their growth like Spade, and also the challenges they've reached in recent times in finding SPs to take those replication copies. We heard from Steel Dome about sort of an interoperability layer that they provide, connecting different storage protocols from traditional Web 2 like NAS protocols onto Filecoin. So it was really a wonderful track. Encourage you all to watch the videos if you weren't able to attend it in person when they come out. Learnings and takeaways, you know, opportunities and challenges, and those challenges represent opportunities. So really opportunity to accelerate enterprise adoption by addressing ransomware protection and legal hold use cases. You know, both Steel Dome and Seal sort of brought those to the table, and we'll be following up on those. Challenges in acquiring data cap for enterprises, from having to disclose their data, you know, really being a number one, to the 5x replication copies required in the context of finding SPs to replicate represent challenges. A number of great things to work on going forward. Related to that is the discoverability and compliance of SPs and finding replications partners to meet you know, enterprise client requirements. Access controls and what it will take to do that securely, really at the SP level, and do that at scale. And then, you know, really the key selling point, or one of them, of Filecoin, is that cryptographic verifiability, and the challenge in extracting those window post events from the chain today and surface those at the user level. So you can see a little word cloud on the right there of you know, some of the key learnings and takeaways from the group that was there through the day. A lot of what we learned has converted into next steps and follow-ups. I won't go through each of those, but I think everyone there is committed to kind of advancing these causes, and whether it's moving forward, sort of innovations and new sort of allocation faucets, if you will, for FIL Plus, or looking into UCAN permissioned retrievals for in the Lotus Boost team. So these are some of the takeaways of things they liked about the day. And we had an incredible, honest discussion. You know, felt like we came out of it with great momentum. So thanks for those of you who joined us, and off we go.
What is up, party people? Hope you're doing well. I'm going to start out by just talking by the numbers, because this is a track recap in 1 minute. We sat together for about 8 hours over the course of 3 sessions, Tuesday and Wednesday. At peak, we were 35 people in a room, and about 50 of you walked through, so we really appreciate your presence and participation. There were 4 mics that were used all the time, which is awesome. I had a really lively discussion. I'm sure that those that were in there can attest to that, and hopefully the recordings are an awesome follow-up. We ended up doing about 12 talks from 10 speakers across 150 slides. Only 2 slides were not presented. Sorry, Masi. We also had 1 new meme that was generated as a result of this track. Shout out to Ian from FF. And we made 0 lunches on time, delaying exactly 1 major photo op. We divided our track up into 3 major goal areas that we were trying to hit. The first was learning about different tools and services that are being built in the overall problem space of data onboarding. In this, we covered a bunch of new things. We talked about the dStore REST API, the next version and evolution of Singularity, the updates that the Daghouse team is making to having programmatic verifiability for data onboarding through UCANs and what they're going to do with Web3 Up and the W3 Filecoin pipeline. We talked about Spade, ground control, and different tools that are being developed overall to make the process lower friction and higher throughput. Our second main area was aligning on supported pathways for what it means to correctly onboard data to the Filecoin network. And so that has implications for standards around data preparation, expectations around access patterns, how are we going to support things like payments. And so we covered a wide variety of more higher level conversations and higher abstractions on what we want to come to, where we have more things to think through, decisions we need to make as a community, and things we want to index on and prioritize in the future. We talked about GDPR compliance, talked about securing private data. I spent a lot of time this morning going deep into IPLD compliant car file data preparation and the upsides of content addressing, the trade-offs that come with partial and full compliance with that. We also touched on leveraging smart contracts for paying for Filecoin storage deals, which is a really cool experiment that was shared. The third main area that we covered was just gaps that we need to close in the next 6 to 9 month time frame. And a majority of the time here was on the direct data onboarding proposal. Lots of takeaways overall. I called out some of the ones that really stood out based on either the amount of attention that was generated through discussion in the room, or just the amount of time we spent covering a topic, because it was really interesting to the people that were there. Just calling out the first two here. For direct data onboarding, we sort of simmered it down in the room as, do the SP gas cost savings actually outweigh the client UX getting slightly worse because you now need FIL and wallets, or we need more tools to be built to facilitate data onboarding, and the increased overhead for maintaining Oracle's off-chain or somewhere else. And that's something we need to go dig deeper into to build stronger opinions about this. And then we did spend a lot of time talking about data prep this morning, and so we came to some conclusions around base case, what the recommendations look like, and cases in which we might want to go beyond that. There's a bunch of other stuff on the slide. I just heard the bell ring. Check it out. Lots of action items and follow-up. Definitely not going to go through these. A lot of your names are on there. Apologies, but looking forward to continuing. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, so I'll really try to do this in 1 minute because my voice, my vocal cords might quit on me at any moment. But yeah, so we had a track on scale and compute. And our goal there was not to solve any specific problems. It was really to find out what people are doing out there and what their requirements are and what their pain points are. So we had a number of excellent speakers and participants from a number of organizations. And what we did during that day was basically, in the morning we focused on compute. We have IPVM, Bacalhau, and Lilipad participating. We had a big announcement, Lilipad v2 being launched. And then in the afternoon, we discussed mainly potential IPC users, and again, their pain points, but also what they are doing, right? And so there we have Table and Fluent, Lilipad, FVM, and other people speaking as well. We also had an astronaut from Protofire. You might have seen his photos around, but you haven't heard the background music and the entire ambience surrounding that talk. So please go and watch the recording because it is worth it. And at the end of the day, we finished with the discussion of scaling Filecoin using regions. So what were the main learnings and takeaways? Well, in the morning, so one of the outcomes is that really the gap between data and bandwidth is growing. I mean, we knew that, but it's always good to be reminded. But there is amazing work going on in the distributed computer arena and bringing the computation closer to the edge, closer to the users, right? So there's also a lot of overlap there's some overlap between the projects, but also a lot of synergies and complementarity. So that it was great to have everyone in the room. Overall, there's just a huge need for more capacity and lower costs, chain costs, to support all of these projects, which is great for us in IPC. What we got also were very clear signals with respect to the IPC user priorities, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but a big part of our work will be actually distilling this and turning it into actionable roadmap items. One thing that we have been told rather bluntly is that we also need to make the deployment story much better. We need to not only make it easier to deploy subnets, but to deploy all of the tooling that people need within those subnets. And yeah, we might have a path to that.
And then the question of moving critical Filecoin components to subnets is a tricky one. We might need to snark everything, but we might also have other ways to get there. There's a number of next steps. I also won't cover them in detail, but yeah, we really need to go through the immense information download that we received and actually extract all of the details, bring them all into our roadmap. We have already started with some of these items. We were working with WavyPatch today. There goes my 1 minute. And we have some other homework to do. But I really think that in a few weeks we will have a much more comprehensive roadmap for IPC covering not just M3 but the milestones beyond. And so that was really the best outcome that we could have hoped for. That's me.
Quick refresh just in case. Okay. So, yeah, next one. So, today we discussed a bunch of things. One of the main ones was talking about the business opportunities that storage providers have in the context of deals. So, of course, like us, we are getting like in a time of the network where like the tooling is more mature so that providers can onboard more and more data. Providers need to figure out like new business models around it. On that front, providers are also looking for ways of collaborating, sharing deals, and making sure that replicas live across multiple storage providers. There is a bunch of space for providers to reduce cost by sharing tooling and sharing best practices that providers use. Most of the tooling today is mainly centralized in each of the providers, which is not ideal for a decentralized network. So changing that would be great. Tooling can significantly, we also realize that tooling is significantly improving efficiencies. We have seen like Filecoin file systems and things like that that can actually improve reads and writes by 40%. So the learnings, again, storage providers are focusing more on paid deals today, and that also opens up the opportunity for providers to specialize on doing deals, and that also opens up space for providers to specialize on other things like sealing sectors, data preparation, and other things like that. Yeah, that's mainly what were the learnings. Next steps, more collaboration between storage providers. So storage providers should have like more structured way on how to share deals. Storage providers also have like particular tooling that they want to use in order to share those deals. Yeah, those are kind of.
Most track leads ever.
Yeah.
3 is better than 1.
All right, recap. You want to go first?
Yeah, the clock's ticking. Okay, great. So today was our track. It was fantastic. Lots of talking, lots of engagement, which we really appreciate from everyone. In the first part of the morning, we were kicked off by Raymond, who presented Open Source Observer, a really cool open source tool for tracking engagement and retention of developers in open source communities. Really excited to see this put into effect for Filecoin. And then we led it with several hours of talking from me, going through the proposed improvements for the FIPS process. Again, this was great. We talked about the different types of FIPS we want to see, different levels of complexity and what this means for consensus decisions, what kinds of mechanisms and tools we can build to support these, and really deep diving on some of the implementation details of this, which I think was really valuable. Yes.
Great. We did a big FIL Plus overview aligned on some of the overarching principles so that we can then drop into the mechanisms and tactical implementation needs. We saw a really cool presentation about risk and some subgraph analysis tooling that we're doing with a partner team, Elementus. We're very excited to keep pushing out these other tools. And our sort of big change that we talked a lot about around these new meta pathways, how do we create allocators and think of compliance using these different types of allocators and pathways to data cap, and showed some of the ways that we have been measuring. You already saw some of our graphs in previous recaps around measuring that data cap utilization. Some of our learnings, I'll go first, then pass it back. The governance team is really going to keep pushing these implementation improvements forward. A big thing that we want to focus on are these stricter guidelines, so that if we can have strict guidelines that define compliance, we can then lead to more automation to enforce those interventions. Interventions in the form of not giving more data cap or removing data cap from a client, and how do we keep thinking about new types of interventions backed up by objective quantitative metrics. We have some open questions around possible FIP changes in the upcoming timeline. Maybe we need to push some FIP3 terminology changes that might, be more controversial or not. And then there was also an interesting question that came up around sector extension by an original client. Should that require new data cap and a new application? How should we handle that? What are some of the kind of costs incurred by holding on to some of that data, that over 1 exabyte of data that has been onboarded? And then, did you have anything you wanted to drop in?
I think this is great.
Okay, great. So then other track learnings?
Yeah. We just finished our track, as mentioned, so we sort of did a hybrid track learnings and next steps. As mentioned, when it comes to the FIPS improvement process, really diving deep on some of the implementation details, as you can see documented here. Not documented here actually has to do with our roadmap. Additionally, I want to note that for us, we are going to be putting together a maintenance and moderation policy for this, so that we can keep it going. And if anyone else would like to clone or fork that, I would gladly give you a copy of it as well. So you can message me.
Okay, and last thing, next steps for us, come to FIL Istanbul. It's going to be super fun. We're probably going to have some FIL Plus Day content there, where we may be rolling out a new notary election cycle. Apply to be a notary, build an allocator onboarding pathway with us, and join. Sweet. Up next, Matt.
Hello, hello. Right, the Reimagining Filecoin's Future with FEM track. So we had a bunch of group discussions to start with, interspersed with some short talks on new Block Explorer stuff that Berix is working on, intro to DeFi, and the FEM bounty contract. It was kind of a small group, those that hadn't been lured away from the siren song of the food. But anyway, we had a good discussion, which was great. We talked about FEM's role in Web3 and programmatic SP services. And thank you very much to the chap that turned up from SEAL, who we directed all our SP questions to, who he handled very well. So thank you for that. So our learnings around programmable SP services. Many SPs and clients want to deal in fiat and not crypto. This is not just something we heard in this track, but I heard in some of the other tracks as well. And the SPs need to have some minimum information about the client they're dealing with. If you think about it from the very simple case of if you're a regulated business in the US, or any business in the US in most cases, you can't deal with certain clients from certain countries, right? So, an SP in the US can't be taking deals on from a client in North Korea, for example. So they need to have some kind of information about it. So we had some talks about decentralized ID, auditing, that kind of thing, how they can get that. App developers, block time and finality issues, still one of the key pain points. The great thing is from some of the other tracks, like the earlier compute scale track, IPC is looking like that hopefully is going to address some of those things. And we had to talk about DeFi and talking about things like staking pools, enabling SPs to have access to FIL. The growth is expected to accelerate even more when we've got DEXs in place and bridges on the FEM, because you're going to be able to move liquidity between, say, stable coins and FIL, for example. And that ties in with some of the clients not necessarily wanting to deal with crypto. That might make that easier for them. And for some of the things that are growing on Filecoin with some of these DeFi things, not directly copying exactly from other blockchains, because Filecoin has some of its own intricacies there. So we're actually seeing, I think there's a DEX that's being worked on that is sort of a new DEX specifically for Filecoin that's being worked on. So that's going to be quite interesting. Next steps and follow-up, talking about compliance around, what information do SPs need to be able to make decisions around compliance. exploring public dashboard builds with Zondax and what they're doing with Berix. Identify and understand more of the FEM and IPC use cases with the IPC stuff coming up, the new tools that they've got soon, then that'll be great, but we'll be able to actually kick the tires of that from the FEM point of view and see how that goes there. Look at requirements for FEM WASM actors, what is needed from the ecosystem side. This is also being looked at from the FEM people specifically as well within the core team. And look at the community desire for some of these higher level languages. So there's already been work done on, say, assembly script and Rust and TinyGo implementations to compile down to WASM. Those have kind of been put to the side whilst we've been focusing on the EVM stuff. But actually try and find out from the community which of those, now that we've got the FEM out there, which of those they actually have the most desire for. So yeah, keep growing DeFi partners. Beric's is going to investigate how IPC subnets will work with things like block explorers. Do you need to deploy a block explorer for each subnet? For example, do you have one block explorer and you register subnets? What about private subnets? All that kind of thing. There we go. Thanks.
All right, you all look tired, so I'll keep this brief. We found out that the Glyph people are not just DevOps, they are actually explorers. We discovered that the blockchain is not easily available and that the Filecoin spec is outdated. We discussed a few options. Should we just ignore it? How about we delete it? Or is it possible to actually fix it? We also found out that databases are important for performance and that bootstrap nodes are something that we all use, but we don't really notice. Two key takeaways. There is a lot of low-hanging fruit still available, and the infrastructure teams pretty much are trying to solve the same issues or are feeling the same pain points. So the next step is that I want to figure out, like, how can we store the blockchain with a service provider or somewhere else inside the ecosystem, and how can we take car version 2 and make it a real thing. Leif wants to figure out why the Glyph people are restarting their Lotus nodes. And Michael is going to keep doing really good work adding a more advanced database to Lotus. And that's it.
Efficient. Love it. I'm going to try and keep up with that. This is what we did in the road mapping track. Most of you were here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we talked about how, and then we did a test version, and then we talked about how some more, and then we did a first step of the real version, and then we had our amazing track and theme DRIs step up, and then we actually built an MVP for real, OMG. Some of our takeaways and learnings that I wrote down literally in the 5 minutes before this track started. Road mapping is hard. I'd actually already written that one down. I knew that one was going to be hard. Theme grouping is fun. That was actually pretty useful and highlighted there's a lot of really exciting improvement areas. We had some interesting learnings about the star map tool itself around ISO formatted date ETAs and the struggle of adding these things into GitHub. So there's some areas of improvement here for us to continue making it an easier to use tool. Request if anyone has some bandwidth to help contribute and make Star Map even easier to use, come find me and I'd love to connect you in with the open source maintainer team. And this is our next steps and follow-ups. We have a draft project community roadmap. We have to communicate some of the improvements needed around Star Map loading. That was actually one of the milestones in our initial test roadmap. We're going to work with Ignite on some of the ISO date issues. Theme DRIs are going to be continuing to refine and make sure they get those ETAs into each of their child issues. And then hopefully we can go and present this at future events and treat it as a good self-updating source of truth about all of the amazing work that's getting done across our community. And that's what we did. Thank you, track leads, for coming and presenting the recaps. Woo. Awesome. I know we are keeping people from drinks. You may go down. Or you can stay here. You know, hang out. It's cozy. But we're gonna go very quickly into a retro, just get the ideas down, and then we'll let you go and, oh, sorry, retro PGF and then that. Just quick reminders, please do keep sharing your learnings, snaps, thank yous on our FIL Dev Summit channel or FDS Iceland attendees. If anyone's helped you out, if anyone's, given you a great idea, like shout them out. It's, great that we get to do these things in person, but make sure to also give back and appreciate. Document your learnings, next steps, takeaways. Reminder, there's a lot of awesome GitHub issues that you can add some info to. And then, of course, watching and sharing the recordings. A lot of these are already on YouTube. I know we're really, really, really fast in getting those recordings up there. So track leads, make sure that you're approving and making sure the speakers can look at the recording, thumbs up it, going live on YouTube, and then we can get these out there so that everyone who couldn't be there in person can immediately start watching these, and that's what we are all gonna do next week, because not all of us got to be in every track, so it's gonna be great. Awesome, so now we're gonna have a very quick retro PGF.
Hey everyone, okay, I'm gonna keep this less than 60 seconds. I don't work for OP Labs, but we at OS Observer, a proud PL nucleation, is a proud badge holder for RetroPGF 3. And I was told to encourage you guys to apply to RetroPGF 3. Quick, what is it? At a high level, it's Optimism's program for funding public goods. It's anything where they are retrospectively funding any public goods that have contributed to the Optimism ecosystem. I encourage you to read their blog if you want to read a little bit more. How much money are we talking about? Big bucks. This is their biggest round as of yet. We're talking about over $30 million. And their signups are soon. This took me maybe less than 30 seconds to find, but they use things that we build in this ecosystem, including libPDP and IPFS, and I'm sure plenty of other things that folks in this community do. I encourage you to sign up. Signups end on October 23rd. Voting begins next month. Here's a QR code if you need it. Check it out.
Tons of projects, tons of groups are always wondering about, but what about blue funding for R&D? Go apply to that, and there are more programs like that, so go take advantage of it. And the more successful this program is, the more it will scale. So yeah, go apply. Great, so now we're gonna go into the retro. This is not public good funding. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to have just a quick intro for everybody. We tend to do these retros in these events to try and get learnings and distill good feedback and good information that helps us plan better events in the future. This is the QR code for the Google Doc for this FIL Dev Summit retro, so just hit that and you're going to be able to start typing. We're going to spend about 5 minutes writing, so it's going to be fast, just the most important stuff that is top of mind. It's really, really, really important that you give us some feedback so that your voice is heard and we deal with whatever you care about next time. If you don't have it here, don't go complaining to the teams about it later, because we're going to use this list. Great, most people have already done a retro. Just throw in what you liked, what you disliked, what you longed for, and what you want us to stop doing. All right, we are gonna move into just some light emoji sprinkling. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to read through and add some of the emojis here. You can only add 5 emojis total. So you have to pick the ones you want and drop them. Due to time constraints, we're not going to discuss them here, but you can leave that there and we will try and form some kind of discussion out of it at some point in the future, if it's relevant. And make sure to read through. So one of the most important parts of a retro like this is to read what other people think. And remember that this is a large community with lots of opinions. You will disagree, and that's okay. All right, thank you so much for participating in this and reading through. The document will continue to be open. Thankfully, this is a Google Doc with version history, so HackMD has broken multiple times. So you can add more stuff here later on. So if you think of something else later on, you can add it. We will be reading through this and actioning on it later on. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back to Molly.
Awesome. Okay, I don't want to keep anyone from their drinks, so we're just going to say a quick, big thank you to everyone who helped make this possible, and then onwards, continue our discussions and hangouts and great conversations there. So first, huge, huge thank you to all of our track leads. They helped make this all possible. All the content, all the preparation, all the moderation, all the recapping, etc. Thank you guys so much. Huge thank you to our speakers. Thank you for preparing and creating everything. Amazing. We love you. I missed some people, I'm pretty sure. Huge thank you to our supporters for helping make this possible, sponsoring all our food, all our hangouts.
And a shout out to new startup Web3 Mine in the Filecoin ecosystem.
Woo! And of course, a huge thank you to our event organizers, Uni, Hannah, Alexa, Nicole, and Jennifer for making all of this possible and doing all of the coordination.
And Molly for leading us through all of this.
Hearts. And of course to our AV logistics team, everyone who kept us fed, everyone who helped with these amazing recordings, folks who directed us around, our photographers, the folks who created that amazing recap video. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of these wonderful humans.
Thank you so much for having us here in the Harpa and for working with us here. It's been a huge delight and so productive, so really thank you.
Woo! Hearts. Awesome, and that's it. Thank you all so much for coming. This is, well, the official end of all of our content. All of our tracks are wrapped. And now please just join us for drinks and dinner. We have a beautiful dinner that's going to be upstairs after we finish our final happy hour. So excited to drink and eat with all of you wonderful humans. And that's our group photo, by the way. It turned out awesome. So.